so much. Today marks the 25th anniversary of the deadly Northridge quake, and today city and state officials gathered to mark that disaster. CBS 2's Randy Page is live for us in Northridge with a look back on that day. Randy.
Jeff, it's one of those days that those of us who live here in Southern California, is that kind of shared memory, that shared experience. So let's begin with a question. Do you remember where you were at 4:30 in the morning on January 17th, 1994?
Somebody help this woman here.
Does this jog your memory? Or how about this? How much better off are we today compared to 25 years ago?
In some ways, we are much better off, and in some ways, we've fallen behind.
Former USGS seismologist Lucy Jones is considered by many to be the state's leading earthquake expert. She says people were better prepared when the Northridge earthquake hit 25 years ago because there had been a damaging earthquake in Los Angeles every year for the previous 6 years. For example, back then, 40% of the homeowners had earthquake insurance. Most people had plans. Many people stockpiled water at home. But she says on the government level, a lot has been done. Many buildings have been retrofitted, and a lot of cities outside of Los Angeles have been retrofitting buildings as well.
The next earthquake is absolutely inevitable, but the disaster is not.
So what can you do to prevent a personal disaster?
We need to help each other.
Lucy Jones says there may not be emergency services available to you in the days following a big quake, but there are family and friends and community organizations you can turn to. She says strengthen those ties and talk about how we can help each other after the next big earthquake hits.
Stop worrying about dying in the earthquake and start worrying about being bankrupted by the earthquake.
She says your chances of dying in an earthquake are about the same as being hit by lightning, but financial loss can be devastating.
Bring in a specialist to tell me what I can do to make it safer in earthquakes.
And perhaps first and foremost, know what you're going to do the second an earthquake hits. You know the drill. Drop, cover, and hold on. And Jeff, Pat, don't forget one more thing, Shake Alert LA. This is a great app. It's free. Download it into your phone. It'll give you the heads up before the next quake. Live in Northridge, Randy Page, CBS 2 News.
Okay, we remember. And you have that Shake Alert.
Absolutely. I have it on my phone, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do it during the break. Well,
It was 4:30 a.m., January the 17th, 1994, and if you were here, you remember being jolted awake, and what followed was a day that was full of chaos and destruction. Tonight, on this 25th anniversary, we look back at what happened and some lasting images from the Northridge earthquake.
According to folks this morning, we've been hit with a major earthquake.
And so it began, one of California's darkest days.
Hey, it could explode at any minute. Get out of the house.
Across the San Fernando Valley, rubble and ruin.
It felt like a big giant just tossing the whole room around. I was scared.
The 6.7 earthquake centered in Northridge on a previously unknown fault. The devastation amplified because the fault was under populated urban communities.
We have just found a brief short time ago victim number 16.
58 people would die. More than 40,000 buildings damaged.
Kaboom! It blew up down there, and it just followed the oil all the way down and blew up all the cars along the street. Explosion after explosion.
Side by side, rivers of fire and water raced down Rinaldi Street.
It sounds like it's right here.
A miraculous recovery of a street sweeper buried for hours beneath tons of concrete.
We're going on 7.5 hours of this rescue effort.
Sections of Southern California's famous freeways would fall.
I have never ever seen anything like this.
The rupture lasted just 8 seconds, but the recovery continues 25 years later. There are so many memorable images from the earthquake, and if you'd like to see more of these powerful images on the day it happened, just go to our website, NBCLA.com, or the NBCLA app. All you have to do is type in Northridge.
Coming through right now.
It's one of it, more than a dozen.
25 years ago today, millions of Southern Californians were jolted from their sleep by the deadly and destructive Northridge earthquake. The violent shaking pancaked freeways, crumbling buildings, and igniting gas fires across the Southland. The magnitude 6.7 quake struck at 4:30 in the morning.
More than 60 people died, which caused upwards of $40 billion in damage. Reporter Eric Spillman looks back at the disaster as it unfolded live on the KTLA Morning News.
A call from a viewer in Idaho, believe it or not, who claims that there was a rolling motion felt in Idaho.
Before the sun came up that morning, it was hard to know the extent of the damage.
It's very dark out here in the valley. But
all we could see from the KTLA helicopter were fires from broken gas lines. And then it became clear that this was one massive quake.
I am here just on the north side of the Santa Monica Freeway at La Cienega.
Freeways had pancaked, buildings had collapsed. People had been hurt and killed. It was a citywide disaster that unfolded live on the KTLA Morning News.
Well, I woke up, I thought the exorcist was happening. The whole floor was shaking. The ground was moving about 3 and 4 feet back and forth.
I awakened to like a TV to my jaw, and I got thrown out of bed.
It was a morning where it was impossible to pretend that we were just reporters or observers.
Just moving up, here goes a whole section of the building.
Because we were experiencing it too.
It scared me to death. This was one of the most frightening events that I have ever gone through as a Californian. Our entire house was shaking. The kids were screaming upstairs. We were trying to locate one another. We were trying to figure out what to do.
We're feeling another aftershock. We're feeling another aftershock
coming through right now.
It's one of more than a dozen that we've felt since the initial
They
quake.
have told us that we will feel aftershocks for the next couple of days.
And all morning long, we showed what the quake had done to Cal State Northridge, to parking structures, bridges, and overpasses. We showed heroes working to save lives.
They've already checked the first and second floors to make sure everyone is out.
We showed the rescue of survivors.
He is under literally 3 layers of concrete.
All the time, we tried to tell it like the audience was part of our family, sharing our own stories too, as Mark Kriske did.
And this is what my kitchen looks like right now. There's a microwave oven. That's the living room. Everything's just totally upside down. Well, you can't really see all that much, but the place is totally trashed, which I'm sure a lot of people's apartments look like.
The violent pre-dawn quake was unleashed by a previously hidden thrust fault running under the San Fernando Valley. The initial jolt lasted only 10 seconds.
Well, if you lived through it, you'll never forget it. 25 years ago this morning, the Northridge earthquake hit. Our Miriam Hernandez went back to some of the spots hardest hit by the earthquake to show us what they look like now.
The scene at this Northridge apartment complex, panic and confusion. To first responders, it looked like a 2-story building, but it had been 3 stories.
Describe for me what happened. I was sleeping, the bed shook from wall to wall. Basically, the windows were buckling in, the walls were buckling in.
14 people died here. The death count across the Southland would climb to 72. And the fatalities, not just in buildings, freeways collapsed.
A motorist on the darkened freeway slammed into a bridge abutment that suddenly had become a wall.
Seismologists say that 500,000 people felt what was classified then as a moderate quake. Multiply that now nearly 20 times. That's the potential in a strong quake.
When we have a 7.8 on the San Andreas Fault, we'll have about 10 million people receiving an equivalent level of shaking.
Now, questions about the future. Scientists say that a stronger earthquake is inevitable, but that a disaster is not, if we prepare. Let's go back to the 7,000 buildings that were destroyed. In 2015, the city of Los Angeles passed an ordinance requiring a retrofit plan on older buildings. Today, 1,500 buildings have been retrofitted, 6,400 have plans in the pipeline, but there still remain 5,000 building owners that have not submitted any plans. Sound like a costly project for your home? Today, there is a proposal to make the retrofit cost tax deductible and expand the retrofit program.
And so for more than 1 million houses, they have a code-compliant retrofit could cost about $3,000. And it could prevent a family from losing everything. It could be the difference between life and death, between moving forward and bankruptcy.
And a heads up today from officials about insurance. At the time of the Northridge quake, 40% of those impacted had earthquake insurance. Today, that number has dropped to 13%. If that does not change, the number of those displaced by a quake could reach 250,000. Miriam Hernandez, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
The anniversary, a reminder to make sure you're ready for a major earthquake here in Southern California. Go to abc7.com/prepare-SoCal for information on making an emergency plan for your family.
All right, well, 30.
We are continuing to look back on a devastating day in Los Angeles history. January 7th, 1994 at 4:31 a.m. That's when a 6.7 magnitude earthquake hit Los Angeles.
It was centered in Northridge. 57 people died. More than 5,000 were injured, and the property damage totaled more than $20 billion. Here's some of the coverage KTTV brought you that day by some of the reporters and anchors who were working then and now.
I'm sitting in the Fox News studio right now, and if you're anywhere in our area, we are, of course, located in Hollywood. If you're anywhere in the Hollywood area, probably even farther out from Hollywood, you know that we have had quite an earthquake.
Rescue efforts are likely to continue all night long here in the 9500 block of Reseda and Northridge, although authorities aren't saying whether they believe that someone's actually alive in what's left of the Northridge Meadows apartment complex. At 4:31 this morning, when that quake hit, this building collapsed, the second and third floors onto the first.
Going under that apartment building on the first floor is one of the most frightening things I've been through. So
authorities have been working here most of the day. Aftershocks frequently chased them from their life-saving efforts, and inside, every movement presented a danger.
The structural integrity of the building is practically non-existent.
When you look at the buildings you guys were in and the apartments, all of you up and down the block, I mean, what goes to your heart? You were in one of these.
I woke up and stumbled out of bed, and everything was already on the floor, and I crashed right into the floor and ran outside, and everything was just back and forth, and it was a catastrophe.
And there you see it from the outside as we zoom out of the apartment building. Some 40 units here. Everybody worked together, got the older folks out without any serious injury. The good thing, if you can call it that, about this particular building is that the damage was to the front, and the inner staircases, which go down sort of the center hallways of these buildings, were largely intact, and that's what people used to get out.
Last Sunday, Hal Eisner did a powerful and emotional look back at the Northridge quake on his show In Depth. And if you missed it, you can still find it at our website. It's foxla.com.
Coming up.